Welcome to the City Current Show, powered by Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services.
This show focuses on sharing good news and powering the good in our community. Now here's your host, City Current CEO, Jeremy Park.
Welcome back to the City Current Show, powered by Higginbotham. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference and powering the good. And in this case, we're sharing a veteran story. We're talking about Hounds for Heroes and Hammer Creek. That's why we're excited to have the co-owners of Hammer Creek with us. We have Jodi and Charlie Kirksey. How are you doing?
Doing great, Jeremy. Thanks for having us on.
Well, we're going to talk all about Hammer Creek. We're also going to talk about a nonprofit, Hounds and Heroes. But let's start with a little bit of your background, Charlie, as a veteran. One, thank you for your service, but share a little bit of that experience, and then we'll kind of dive into what led you to launch Hammer Creek with Jodi.
Sure. Thanks, Jeremy. So I retired from a 5th Special Forces group back in 2021. I did 10 years in the Army. I got injured in 2019 and had to hang it up. So, I had a pretty rough transition. I didn't even realize it at the time. And that's kind of how those things go. I had a pretty bad back injury and some nerve damage. And, thankfully there's several veteran organizations that ended up stepping up. But the first few years of that was really, really hard. A lot of chronic pain, lots of surgeries. I think it was 7 total back surgeries that, and fortunately I had Jodi here to help me get through that. So I know there's a lot of guys out there just like me and, making that transition process right now. And there's a few guys in my network still that I'm kind of passing on the information that ultimately I took from Jodi. I would have never done it on my own. It's kind of hard to reach out and ask for help. I think a lot of guys can relate to that. And, I ended up, how I got to Texas, took a job down here when I got out. There was a private venture that was exploring 3D printing. The guy was hiring a lot of soft guys for consultants on the project, and it ended up turning into a great learning experience. The guy had 4 metal printers down there. They weren't really selling a product, so I had a deep R&D budget, and it was kind of just take it where you want. And which was great, because when it came to suppressors, I got to try everything. It was just as a former 18 Bravo or weapons sergeant, that's in Special Forces, we got a weapons guy, a commo guy, a medic, an engineer. And my thing was weapons, so I had a lot of different suppressor ideas floating around in my head, and I didn't know I was going to start a suppressor company when I got out. But when I got to working down there at this shop and started building these things, I really saw where kind of, I think, my experience on the military side, and also Jodi's, she grew up hunting in the Pacific Northwest. So, the combination of the practical use of suppressors, because a lot of guys, been in my shoes to relate. In the military, we had a lot of really overbuilt, really heavy duty suppressors that were just, these things are over 20 ounces a piece. And that kind of guided our philosophy and leveraging, metal additive manufacturing, which we'll get into here in a bit.
Switch over, Jodi. Share a little bit of your vantage point, because there's a lot to unpack there. We'll definitely dive in deeper into Hammer Creek, but I do want, because as Charlie alluded to, coming out and even with the injuries, from that standpoint, it's hard to know because you're in it, like all the things going on, right? But then to share those experiences with others who are going through something similar, and for them to see him, coming out on the other side and starting to thrive and build a business and the success you two are having. Share a little bit of that from your vantage point, though, of what Charlie went through and what that dynamic was like as a family.
Whew, okay. There is a lot to unpack on that one. Where do I begin? No, like him getting out and kind of suffering that injury, we were kind of, both of us really were kind of out of the game of life really for about 2.5 years because we were focusing on getting him better, and our whole collaborative team that we had helping was amazing, but still it was 100% him and like a little sprinkle of me just because he was the one going through everything. But I was also there every day going through kind of like the caregiver and spousal part of it, which was enduring and hard in itself. But yeah, I mean, it was really eye-opening to the lack of help that the actual military gives to our guys that get out, and the hoops you have to jump through to even get seen at some places. But what Airpower Foundation does, and SOCF and everybody that were a part of Charlie's journey to get better, is imperative to really their survival, and mine and spouses alike. It's really, really important, and you really don't understand how important it is until you live it. And because you can hear people all day long, it's like, oh, we don't get the help we need, but like whenever you're, like I said, like in the thick of it, like that support is absolutely 100% necessary.
You mentioned Airpower Foundation. So touch on Airpower Foundation and Hounds and Heroes, because I think this is something, especially with Andy, that's a cool part of the storyline as well. So touch on Airpower Foundation, touch on Hounds and Heroes, and give us a little bit of a glimpse of that and how that's impacted your life.
Yeah, with the help of our Airpower Foundation and Hounds for Heroes, kind of coming in on the end of his, not the end of his journey, but like the end of his medical journey and getting him better and well. Hounds for Heroes donating Andy to us really has helped Charlie in a lot of ways so far, because we've only had him for about a week now, but really helps calm his nerves and stress and everything like that. And I see that on a day-to-day, even though Andy's still a puppy and a pain in the butt, but I can really tell he's going to be a vital addition to our family for sure.
I think all of this goes back to is, seeing someone go through, and for you all sharing that journey, sharing the hardships, it becomes inspiring for others who are saying, wow, I'm going through this really tough time. Where do I go for help and support and inspiration? And I think that's where, for you all, just sharing that as part of your journey, one, thank you. Two, it is inspiring for others, especially other veterans and their family members, their caregivers who are going through something similar. It gives them hope. So let's switch over and talk more about Hammer Creek, because Charlie, as you alluded to, you had a chance to really dive in deeper. And so go ahead and share Hammer Creek.
Do you mind if I open up a little bit about, what I went through, just because I think there's probably a lot of guys experiencing this, and I know a lot of people that would be in my position right now would be feeling the hesitancy to talk about it because there's such a stigma associated with it, but this is a reality, guys are dealing with it. I think this is a big part of what takes a lot of veterans' lives. Is the first surgery I had actually messed me up worse than even worse than the initial injury. It was a kind of a botched surgery. It took 3 more to fix it. I got some nerve damage, and the doctors essentially gave up. And I'd had 2 knee surgeries in the Army. You're going to just trust what doctors say. Those worked out. I was fine. Kept working. Kept deployed. Kept operating. And when a doctor tells you, hey, there's nothing else we could do, and you're in just, serious pain, pain is just part of the job. Like if someone like me says, hey man, I can't even function, I'm in so much pain, and the doctor says there's nothing else we can do, we can put you on these drugs that'll make you feel better, that's our opioid crisis right there, And so I was on pain medication for 3, 4, almost 4 years, thinking there was nothing else to be done. And here's the thing, that you've got about 2 years of those things working, and you'll be able to function. And somebody that, you're not using them for fun. usually so you can get out of the house. You know, I still got bills to pay. I got to like feed the family, you know, I got to function. And you're going to do whatever it takes to keep pushing forward, you know, and pretty soon you're dependent on these things and they don't work anymore. And you're still, you know, injured. Like you have to fix that thing. And, you know, that's where I found out that those doctors were wrong. You know, SOC-F and some other unsung heroes, you know, working in the background. They found me a world-class surgeon, you know, that got me to the point where I didn't need those things, you know, and I just, you know, once I realized that, once I was like, hey, you know, I'm feeling all right, I was able to just stop taking those things, you know, and look, I did it on my own in my house. Like I was dependent on them, you know. It was terrible. It was the worst 6 weeks of my life. You know, they say, oh, the first 3 days are bad. No, it's 6 weeks of hell before it starts to get a little bit better. And then it's like 1% better per day, you know, so I really owe those organizations my life, you know, and you don't always hear all the details of what gets guys, you know, what takes them out of the fight permanently, you know, but there's always a reason. There's things that happen. And those things, you know, drugs like that they're going to get you out. You can keep moving forward to a degree, but they change who you are. They mess with your judgment, your personality. I mean, you lose a lot from them. And it's just, I can't stress how imperative it is that every rock is looked under before somebody goes down that route, you know. You know, I found a surgeon the surgeon they linked me up with was, you know, in Virginia. I had to travel there. They flew us out there to do it. People come from all over the world to see this guy.
Can we give a shout out to Dr. Schuler and Virginia Spine Institute for saving his life? Fantastic.
And, you know, nobody wants to talk about those things. There is, you know, I'm telling you, if you're sitting in my seat, it's uncomfortable. But yeah. And I think people just know, you know, just don't give up. Like, and even if you've already gotten down to that point where you're dependent on those things, you don't give up. You can get past it. You can suck it up and get through it. You know, you just have to believe you can, and don't stop trying to fix it. You know,
don't take no for an answer.
Don't take no for an answer. That's what Jodi did. You know, she got a lot of no's on the way, but you know, before long, you know, and oddly enough, it is kind of a segue here. What they used in my spine was printed titanium, the same exact kind of material that you'll find in the HC67 sound suppressor, which makes it incredibly light, incredibly strong, and also comfortably quiet.
I like that segue. It's like, and from this. But you know, let's go back. And one, definitely huge thank you for sharing it, because just like you said, it's uncomfortable, but I think this is the part of the conversation that needs to happen more, because when you talk about breaking through and helping others, you being vulnerable and sharing that, both of you, to me, is where the hope lies. And just like you said too, not being afraid to seek out more no's to get the right yes, right? To persevere. Because all of this is a very important conversation that's needed for our veterans, our heroes, and to be able to literally save lives. So thank you. All right, so let's switch over now, just like you're talking about. And go ahead and talk about Hammer Creek, because obviously, I mean, you've got it, you know, on screen there for us to see, but talk a little bit about, we've got kind of the why behind the company, but talk about what you do at Hammer Creek.
All right, so in a life before the military, I was at a CAD-based field. So I learned how to use, you know, CAD and drawing on a computer. So it was an easy transition to learning, you know, what I use now, which is SolidWorks, to work on suppressor designs. And with additive manufacturing, 3D metal printing, now this isn't plastic. I've had a lot of customers, you know, that email me, they're like, is it, there plastics in there? No, this starts out as extremely finely powdered titanium, and then in an inert environment, a laser, essentially what's called sintering, but it's like welding the powder in its profile layer by layer. So this one prints like that, and it's layer by layer all the way up. the threads get machined, but essentially you have a net product there. So it's the closest, direct from CAD to a finished product there is, which is pretty cool. And there's still rules about what will work and what won't, but you've got a lot of freedom with printing, which lends itself really well to suppressors because there's all kinds of geometries you can use that would be impossible to machine. Then there's materials that are traditionally hard to work with, like 718 Inconel. We do the tie cans for lighter duty use and hunting, and 99% of people would do fine with tie. And then for really hard use stuff, we can use 718 Inconel, which is what they use on the skin of the X-15 rocket plane to go hypersonic speeds. This stuff is, it'll outlast your gun without a doubt. It's a little heavier, but for the application, it's outrageously durable. So, and I think I touched on it a little bit before, but from my experience, Jodi's experience hunting, putting weight out on the end of the gun is like putting the parking brake on it. Lighter guns present faster, they're faster target to target, and once you get to an acceptable level of suppression, it doesn't do much for you to go beyond that, by taking a weight or length penalty. So we try to find the optimal point where comfortable suppression occurs at the absolute lightest and shortest length. And I think that's what we do a little differently than most other manufacturers. I just won't accept 1.5 pounds on the end of my gun. You've got a 6.5 pound gun, and there's 1.5 pounds of it out on the end. It's an unpleasant experience.
Talk about the customization in terms of orders. So in other words, obviously from hunting to all, the military grade. So in your ballistics background and everything comes into this, but talk about, orders, how they're placed, customization, time frame, bulk, talk about kind of those different sides of the business.
Good question for Jodi. Jodi handles all the really hard stuff. And
I do mostly HR compliance stuff, honestly. But oh man, as far as like consumer ordering, I'm assuming you're alluding to. Okay. We have a pretty easy system. We just got our website up not too long ago, and so you can order online, and then the process is just like any other gun purchase. Really, is you buy it online, and then if you're local, you can pick it up. Otherwise, we ship it to an FFL. Obviously, we have to go through all the ATF hoops, jump through those before we can transfer it. Then we transfer it to your local SOT, FFL, and they do all the Form 4 work and everything like that for you to pick it up. And then you can also email us directly at hammercreekllc@proton.me. And just email me directly, and then I can put together the invoice, and then really choose your own adventure as far as payment goes. And I'll send you an invoice, and it's super streamlined, really easy.
What's the vision for the company when you look at where you want to go with Hammer Creek? Where do you want to go?
We get asked this a lot.
We do get asked this a lot. And I think, anything it's something we're both passionate about. We're outdoors type people, and, we both grew up shooting and hunting, and I did it professionally for a time. And I think we want to create something that, doesn't feel like a job to us. We can continue to do the things we like to do. And I like being able to interact with the like-minded people. It checks a lot of boxes for us. There's certainly other things we could have gotten into. But as long as we can do that and stay a part of the community, and, and I think it's fair to say there's a certain amount of me that wants to be able to, stay involved on the military side as well. We have some projects that definitely cater towards that we're working on. And if I can kind of stay in the fight in that way, that's a bonus for me.
I've volunteered guiding for some veteran hunting organizations and stuff, and getting disabled veterans out, and our LE out also. And it's hard for a lot of them too to be able to wield a longer, heavier gun. So having these available to add on those guns because it's not only protecting your hearing, but it's also easy to maneuver and it's not so cumbersome because we don't want to put our already 26-inch barrel, putting like another 7 inches on the end of it. So we try and keep those as compact as possible. And that's really super important to me and the women in the industry, and really just the people that can't or have a hard time carrying and using an end heavy firearm.
That reminds me that they're a great way to introduce new people to the sport. If we don't do that, we will entirely lose the Second Amendment within 2 generations. So that reminds me of our sale on the 22 suppressor. This is 1.9 ounces of titanium on this thing. It is movie quiet, and it is a great way to introduce new shooters.
And to give you a size perspective, the barrel on this 22 Ruger is only 3 inches long.
Yeah, this is a 5-inch titanium suppressor here. Yeah. It weighs about the same as 3 rounds of 9mm. It's less than a wristwatch, less than a ball cap, barely there. That's pretty exciting.
Wrap up with website. Where can we go to learn more? Where can we go to get involved and obviously make those purchases? So mention the website and where we go to learn more about Hammer Creek.
Yeah, you can find us online at www.hammer-creek.com and also on Instagram.
Our Instagram is hammercreek_LLC.
Well, Jodi, Charlie, thank you for all you do to power the good. Charlie, thank you for your service again. Thank you for coming on the show, you two.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services is proud to power the City Current Show. We're a people-first company that protects what matters most, the families, businesses, and trailblazers that keep our community going. As one of the nation's top independent insurance firms, Higginbotham is a single-source solution for business insurance, employee benefits, HR services, and personal insurance that's customized for you. We're here to serve you, the people you care about, and your community. Call 866-377-1959 or visit higginbotham.com.